Yeah, and like it's one of those things where with your pet, it's kind of like, hey, veterinarian, tell me what to do and I'll do it. And I at least don't think about side effects. You had mentioned they're real and they're there, but when you start thinking about kids, like the very first time I ever had to give my daughter it was like a vitamin D drop. I did it one time and I was like, I don't care if she needs vitamin D. I'm not doing that again. Like that's
Yeah.
to get her to choke that stuff down was like one of the worst experiences of my life. And yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that, but have you had that experience giving
Of
kids
course.
medicines?
No, of course. Oh God, of course. I mean, and even when they get sick and they're helpless and you know that they have to take this, the fight is real and it's scary. And as a new parent, I mean, it's incredibly intimidating. What I will tell you though is that, first kid, you kind of handle them with, like they're made out of glass. Second kid, you're going to shove that vitamin D right down their throat. I don't have any doubt. I don't have any doubt.
I mean, I can already tell you, like, the learning curve for the poor first child is terrible. Like,
It's hard.
I just did the discovery of, like, how do you actually tie a swaddle? Because before I was like, putting the blankets on there.
Right.
And then the baby would get their arms out and then freak out. And I was like, baby's being bad, until you realize, like, no, you're doing this all wrong. And that, it just took me about 2 months to figure that out. And I can't even imagine how many mistakes I will make along the way.
No, tons. Yeah, you'll make tons, but that's normal. Everybody does, right? I mean, we had our first kid, and we made a decision to move to Indiana, and talk about an experience. Your wife is pregnant for the first time. You completely move away from your family, and then you have your child with no support system around you, and you're making all kinds of mistakes. But they're resilient, and it all worked out. But yeah, I mean, parenthood's a rush, man.
Both you and I had this situation where it took a long time to get pregnant. And without going into any of my wife's side of this, for me, if we had had the child as easily and as quickly as other people, I think this phase of the baby not sleeping and having all of these problems, I think there's a chance I would have been resentful of it, because I think I would have been like, can't you just be a good baby that does the right things and just does things? And now a screaming baby to me is like, well, I'm just glad she's here, because it was not inevitable that this was going to happen. And, it's weird to say, like, I thank God, whatever that means, for the fact that it was difficult, because that difficulty, which was probably the worst point in my life, was one of the best things that could have happened to me.
Same experience. And we've talked about this. And my wife we had about a 5-year run where we were really trying all kinds of methods, and we weren't getting where we wanted to go. But you're right. I mean, when that happens, it challenges your marriage. It challenges everything. You start to get resentful when other people are having success in that area, and you look at yourself and you say, how is that emotion coming out of me? It's a challenge. But one of the things that, and I know we've talked about this, was the advice that I got when we were going through this was from my wife's aunt, who happens to be a nun. She said, you got to stop praying and asking for what you want and start praying for the grace to accept what comes. And when that advice was given to me, it was kind of my first step into stoicism in some regard, to say, okay, start thinking about what you can control. And it just changed my attitude completely. And, we worked through it together, and thankfully I have an extremely strong wife that is incredibly resilient. I know you do too. And our marriage was 10 times stronger after going through all this. And it would still be regardless of the outcome, because of the challenge. So as much as it was, like you said, the worst, maybe, valley of our relationship, it was the best.
Yeah, there were a couple of times when you had told me things that were really important, one of which is you're going to get advice from people that didn't struggle, and you got to let them be able to give that advice, because they just don't know. And that was really true, because I had started to become resentful when somebody would be like, oh, just try this thing, and that's what worked for us. And it was like, and I was like, you have no idea how difficult this has been. And the other big thing and this is why I try and talk openly about it, I did not know how common it was for people to lose a pregnancy. And so when it happened to me, or when it happened to us, I was so shocked because I didn't know that it could happen that I was like, what the fuck? Like, why didn't anybody tell me that this could happen? And so now if I'm talking to a young guy and they start opening up in any way, shape, or form, I'm like, hey, you need to be prepared that this could happen. I'm not telling you so you can be afraid. I'm not telling you so you can worry your wife. But if you don't know that this can happen, then when it happens, if it happens, you're not going to be ready for it. So that's why I try and be as open as I can without, my wife is a very private person, but to say like, people need to know that. Young men in particular need to know that.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. And it was crucial for me to start to have those conversations too with, friends that I know were experiencing the same thing, because you're right. You do get just a flurry of advice of what you should be doing, and your eyes roll, and you start to think about how challenging it really is. But yeah, I mean, it's a difficult situation, and I think more conversation about it is better for people, because you're right. There's so many people that have experienced this, whether they admitted it or not. And again, I think, you just have to get resolute about the fact that, hey, I'm going to accept these outcomes, but I'll be damned if I'm not going to try everything I can and support my wife and keep our relationship strong through all of it. That was really the eye opener, right? I mean, it was just, hey, we're going to lock arms and get through this together, regardless of what happens. Really helped.
Amen. Like I'm in total agreement with you about how much closer it made my wife and I. And I firmly believe that even if we had not been blessed with having a child, the process of going through this would have just tied us together, because I had to embrace stoicism. I decided I was going to run 500 miles, and I did that. And that's when I began to start having that process of losing my childhood naivety of like, well, if I just want something bad enough, dreams can come true.
Right, exactly.
And because like, it's good to have some level of idealism, but idealism can knock you off of seeing what is actually present and in front of you. And it can knock you away from, it's not to say like, oh, a stoic is a person that doesn't get happy or doesn't look forward to things, but it's one that says, I accept what is. And by accepting what is allows you to see like, hey, even though my wife and I are struggling right now, I can see the amazing tenacity of this woman that I would have otherwise ignored, or I would otherwise have taken it for granted. And so for me, I know if there's somebody struggling and they haven't been able to make the breakthrough, or they've had to go another route and decide for adoption or something altogether, the only thing I can say is, the best thing you can do is learn how to be in the present and to be grateful for the things that you do have, as opposed to desiring the things that you don't have.
Yeah, no, well said. I mean, is that kind of the catalyst that got you into stoicism? Because our conversations early on, I think we were both kind of at the start of a journey around understanding those concepts. Was this part of it, or were you already down the road?
Oh, 100% that it took it to a whole new level. When I first was introduced to stoicism, it was me figuring out that the darkness was coming, right? Like I had a really good job. I was making money. I kind of had the things that I wanted. And I started to look around and say like, hey, I don't feel great, right? Like if you had talked to my high school self, I have transcended everything that he wanted, and now you have it all. And so what does all this mean? And I realized that I was not actually taking responsibility in some deeper way. And so stoicism started with the Jordan Peterson line of clean up your room, and then starting to take pride in the fact that, hey, my bed is made every day. And once you start on that process and you start going out wider and wider, but I think all the way up until we really hit this challenge, I had never really faced adversity. I mean, sure, I'd faced things like, I really wanted to get in grad school and I hope I get a job, but I'd never faced something where I truly wanted something and I was standing next to a person that really, really wanted something, and that we may not get it, and that may impact the entirety of our lives. And that was when I had to take stoicism from being this like thing that I was playing with to help me get in shape, to being a thing that I integrated into my life to transcend the hell that I was in.
No, that in very similar paths. And it's amazing how much those tenets stand the test of time, right? Even, I mean, think about all the different things that you could face. There's elements of stoicism that I've experienced that have helped me through numerous situations, both work and personal. But yeah, that was kind of one of those areas where I knew I had to change my thought process from being just completely optimistic to being realistic. And it helped us as a relationship to start to plan out, okay, let's make some decisions for ourselves, and let's take accountability for what we're doing and build that life that we want, regardless of some of those things that we can't control. It's definitely something that, you never wish that type of thing on someone, to have to go through a crucible like that or experience, issues in their relationship or challenges. But, it has been one of the best things, I think, that happened to me to change just who I am in general.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's weird to wish people suffering, but right. I do wish people adversity that is not easy to get past, because the suffering has meaning suddenly when you realize, like, okay, this is the way that it no longer is just me experiencing pain. It's me learning some lesson from this pain. And I guess that's kind of my definition of stoicism. It's saying, like, all right, I've identified that I am experiencing pain or suffering or sadness or whatever that is. And that is actually the indication that something's wrong. And rather than wishing it away, it's me saying, how can I become okay with what is?
Yeah. And in my office, a quote from Aurelius that I keep, that, if it's staring in front of your face every day, you can't help but look at it and apply it. And it's the quality, the happiness of your life will be dictated by the quality of your thoughts. And as simple as that is, it really is something that you can apply. You can have challenges, but no one can make you feel sad. No one can make you feel angry. It's your decision, consciously or not, to go that route. And once no way, shape, or form am I saying I've got this thing figured out, but I have at certain times applied it to say, hey, why am I thinking this way? And is it who's making me? I am, so I'm going to change that attitude. And it can help in a variety of different ways. At least I've experienced that personally. So it's amazing when you start to take control a little bit, that it just changes your whole outlook on life.
Thanks for checking out this podcast short. If you like this interview, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and hit that bell so you always get notified about this podcast. And if you're really interested in conversations like this, you may want to consider joining the Articulate Ventures Network. To find out more, go to network.articulate.ventures.